scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Those poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize.
It's us, your favorite communist podcasters.
Absolutely. I would hope your favorite communist podcasters.
Yeah,
honestly.
if we're not, gulag. Gulag to you. Just kidding, you guys.
I mean, maybe. We'll see how it goes.
Guillotine. Wink, wink. Foreshadowing. What we're going to talk about.
Foreshadowing? Do elaborate, Phoebe. What are we talking about?
Well, oh, hi, by the way, I'm Phoebe.
I'm Taylor.
And this is our podcast Remarks. Well, today we're going to talk about why violence is good, actually.
And cool.
And cool. Also cool.
Yeah, kind of a fun topic, kind of a fun premise.
Mm-hmm.
We probably should start off by saying, like, this isn't to say that you should just, like, go around and punch people for no reason.
Yes.
But
exactly.
Some people deserve to be punched, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, so basically we just wanted to talk about, like, violent revolutionary acts and why they have worked in the past and why, like, peaceful protest and, like, the existing channels within our, like, governmental structure, i.e. voting, etc., basically won't ever really do anything to free us of the shackles of the capitalistic overlords.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of points to make, so...
There definitely is.
Let's get into it. Oh, I actually did want to say, sorry, a little bit of a side tangent. That has nothing to do, but because we did our episode on, like, billionaires, you know?
Yeah.
I found out today that, because you were talking about the Kardashians.
Yes.
And did you know the Kardashians started their own credit card called the Kardashian Card with a K?
No.
And it was a prepaid credit card that they, like, marketed towards kids.
No!
Like, as, like, a first credit card kind of thing. Yeah, it was awful.
No. God damn it.
And it was a giant scam because they had, like, a bunch of hidden fees and stuff.
Yeah, sounds about right. Oh, also, I think it would be remiss if we didn't just mention the whole Jeffrey Bezos went to space thing.
Oh my god, yeah.
I mean, we're not going to get into it. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Jeffrey Bezos fucking went to space, you guys. That's really all.
Violence against Jeffrey Bezos?
Yeah, let's violently kill Jeffrey Bezos.
Didn't quite catch that.
Oh, I said let's kill Jeffrey Bezos.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Of course.
We're not inciting anything. Anyway.
Yeah, do you want to start us off?
I'll take it away. I think chronologically I'm before you, so...
I believe so.
Am I? Yeah. Okay. Well, today I'm here to talk about when they started guillotining the shit out of people in France.
Fuck yeah.
So this era was known as the Reign of Terror. It's probably going to be somewhat familiar to you guys. This is going to harken images of, like, public executions of the bourgeoisie, guillotines, head in baskets, etc. The Reign of Terror, or known as the Terror, was a big part of the French Revolution. If you know anything about France, you know that there's been, like, a million French revolutions. But, like, the biggest, most famous one is just referred to as the French Revolution. And it is the French Revolution. The one that basically influenced, like, politics in France and, frankly, across the world for, like, the rest of forever.
The rest of forever.
Forever.
It's what the Coldplay song's about.
Yeah, Viva La Vida,
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my god. Nah. Just kidding. We're not licensed to.
I don't know if you can get sued for just, like, humming a song.
That's true.
Maybe you
for
can.
Poorly singing a song. So the French Revolution took place between 1789 and 1799. It was sparked because of the working class's dissatisfaction with the conditions that they were forced to live in, and work in, etc. The crazy amount of, like, work that they were forced to do, the large rates of unemployment, the high cost of food with high rates of starvation, economic despair, and a great disapproval of King Louis XVI and just of the monarchy in general. As well as just, like, the the juxtaposition between the way that the working class was living and the bourgeoisie was living, like the disparity between the two was monumental. So the Reign of Terror, there's kind of like some back and forth about exactly when it started, because the guillotining was happening like in different waves at a few different points. They basically say it was 1793 to 1794. Give or take. So by the end of it, 16,594 death sentences had been completed, and then an added about 10,000 people died in prison awaiting their trial.
Wow.
For being counter-revolutionaries. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote The Social Contract, which laid out a government plan, which is pretty similar to, like, the early foundations of the American government. A lot of that was taken from, like, the French Republic.
Yeah, understandable.
Like, basically the ideas of, like, democracy, voting for, fucking representatives, blah, blah, blah. The social contract says that each person is born with rights. Like in America, it says we have inalienable rights. That it is the job of the government to protect these rights, that the government works for the people, and it is made to serve the people rather than serve a select few, as it was doing with serving only the bourgeoisie and, like, the clergy members, etc. Again, pretty similar to kind of, like, the fundamental parts of, like, American government-ish. Yeah. Until that also became a whole shit show. But anyway. So one of the famous, like, characters of this French Revolution and the Reign of Terror is Robespierre. He was a French lawyer and a key player in the French Revolution. He utilized ideas from Rousseau's social contract to push France towards being a republic. He wanted to be represented by officials in a democratic government that was working towards the will of the people. And he called anyone who was opposed to this idea a tyrant and said that they should be, quote-unquote, dealt with.
I mean, he's not wrong, though.
He's not
like,
wrong.
I feel like, yeah, if you're gonna, like, I don't know, I guess it's on a personal level. Like, if you're gonna tell me that one person has more, like, power than I do, it's like, well, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
No. And I mean, that's kind of republics will end up that way anyway.
True.
America,
as
case in
we've
point.
seen.
But like, I guess ideologically,
Sure.
it's like, no, fuck you. I don't want to be like less than somebody else, even on like paper, you know. 'Cause,
Exactly.
like on paper, everybody in America is equal.
Equal.
But that's not
Yeah.
how it is. But
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and like at the time, it was pretty, you know, revolutionary for the time. Obviously, now we're like, what the fuck? And also, you know, there was that whole thing of like people being born into nobility, and that's what they were really like. One of the big points of the French Revolution was fighting against and breaking that system of like just people being born into the monarchy and into nobility. And it's like, oh, just because this motherfucker's this guy's son, he just gets to be king. Like, that's some fucking shit, you know?
That's some bullshit. And also, it's like, there's like kings that are like 12 years old, and it's like,
exactly.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Exactly. Like, how do you not look at that and be like, no, that's a flawed system?
That seems bad.
Like, oh my god. Yeah. In Robespierre's speech called Virtue and Terror in 1794, he said that the working class was to crush the crush the enemies of the revolution, let the laws be executed, and let liberty be saved. Unquote.
Unquote.
So during this time of the French Revolution, and also as the Reign of Terror started to kind of happen, a group called the Sans Culottes formed. This was made up of the lower class common people of France. They basically came together. So this was like the workers, farmers, blah, 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 etc. The people that were being fucked over, living in the streets with the sewage and all that shit. They came together to advocate for their rights and to fight back against the oppressive monarchy. The basic ideals of the Sans Culottes was social equality, economic equality, and popular democracy. They wanted to abolish all of the authority and privileges of the monarchy, of the Roman Catholic clergy, and of anybody of noble status. They wanted to have a fixed wage, price controls on food, and one of their biggest things was acts against counter-revolutionaries. The whole thing with the food is, like, something that I'm sure a lot of people who are familiar with the French Revolution know about. If you've ever seen Les Mis, which it's, like, the plot of Les Mis, it's, like, debatable which revolution it was actually, like, spanning, because it's been argued that it was, like, the June Uprising, which we talked about on our art episode, and it's been argued that it was the French Revolution. But, you know, there's the whole plot point of where Jean Valjean steals a loaf of bread in order to feed his family because he can't afford to buy one because it's very expensive.
Isn't that like a big moral question that people ask now too because of that? Is like, if you steal a loaf of bread to like feed your family, is it like morally wrong to do that, you know?
Exactly, yeah. It's like one of those like dilemmas or whatever, which I'm like, where is the dilemma?
I don't see where the dilemma is.
Please explain it to me.
You should absolutely steal bread to feed your family.
Oh, it's like the trolley thing of like, oh, do you switch the trolley to man goes to jail for stealing bread? Or, I mean, man steals bread and feeds his family, or switch it to entire family dies of starvation. Like,
it's like,
what is worse to you? Yeah. Which, tangent, but, you know, it's important. The whole, like, idea, and one of the biggest things that, like, American government was claimed to be a fundamental idea of the American government is this life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm like, is life not free healthcare? Because if we don't get healthcare, we fucking die. Is liberty not, like, the rights of gay people to get married, women to have abortions, etc.? Is the pursuit of happiness, like, not fucking, I have to work 18 hours a day in order to pay for my bills?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, where along the lines did that get so fucking misconstrued? And the thing that gets me the most, and I think it's just because I've been listening to this episode of a podcast about healthcare, is just the whole idea of that we are supposed to have this inalienable quote-unquote right to life, but if you don't have healthcare, you're going to die.
Yeah, it's like you have the inalienable right to life as long as you can afford it.
Exactly. Put that on a fucking shirt.
Honestly.
So, the sans-culottes. So, the sans-culottes made up the majority of the paramilitary forces of the French Revolution. They were pretty much, like, the most... Because these people had fucking basically nothing to lose, so they were like, let's do this shit. We're gonna chop some heads. Like, they were ready to go.
Death is worse than what we're doing right
now.
So, or, I mean, death is better than, like, what we're doing right
now.
So.
Yeah. Like... there's nowhere more down to go than where we are. So so they were quick as fuck to jump into the revolution and made a big part of the Revolutionary Army. They were also the ones who carried out most of the executions against the quote-unquote enemies of the revolution. And the sans-culottes were seen as the living representation of the revolutionary spirit, which is hella true. They were pretty sick.
Hell yeah. Based.
You might say the sans-culottes were pretty based. So during this reign of terror, even people of the, like, middle and upper classes had started wearing uniforms of the sans-culottes in order to show solidarity with the working class and with the new French Republic. Probably partially out of fear and partially out of they were like, this is a good idea.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times, too, with, like, especially with, like, middle class type people, like, at least from what I know historically, like, they'll kind of lean to the direction they feel the tide is going, you know?
Sure.
That's why, like, so many middle class people will just, like, go along with, like, fascism, because they're like, well, this is going to be a thing, so I probably should, like, get on the right side right now, you know?
Right.
At least if they're smart enough to, like, foresee it.
Yeah. And, like, the whole idea of the middle class is such a thing made up by the bourgeoisie in order to separate the classes. Like, and obviously now it's still made up, but it's kind of turned into this more real thing, like you were saying, where middle class people will do things in order to, like, protect the wealth that they have and not end up in, like, situations like homelessness, etc., extreme poverty. But, like, the entire idea of there even being a middle class is a made-up thing that the bourgeoisie created in order to create separation between people that have a little bit more wealth than peasants and peasants. But, you know, it's that whole thing of, like, oh, you're a second closer to becoming homeless than you are to becoming a billionaire. But there's been this induction and convincing of people in that class that there is an opportunity for them to become a billionaire or what have you. And it's like, no, bro, like, we fucking need you because you're so far from ever becoming that.
True.
Anyway, went off. So the upper classes kind of started wearing these uniforms in order to show solidarity. The uniform of the sans-culottes, most importantly, this included a pair of pantalons, which was a long pair of trousers, and that was worn in order to separate themselves from the upper class and the bourgeoisie, who would wear culottes, hence the name where sans-culottes comes from. Culottes were like these silk kind of puffy shorts kind of thing.
Hell yeah.
Which it's funny because culottes, like, still, or at least the term culottes still exists to this day, which is kind of like the pants that I was wearing, I think, on our last episode when you were like, oh, Mike, those pants. Those were kind of culottes. Like, they're sort of like a gaucho type vibe. Like, they're like a little just below the knee, kind of flowy, kind of like
I think I know the vibe you're talking about, like the French vibe.
Yeah. They would also wear a red Phrygian, excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, cap known as the Liberty Cap, which is kind of this, like, red slouchy little hat thing. And they also wore wooden clogs.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And coats with short tails because the upper class had long-tailed coats.
I see. That sounds like ideal warfare attire, actually. Like, it seems like I would want to fight in wooden clogs.
No, for sure. That would not be painful at all.
No, absolutely
not. So this group, the sans-culottes, believed in a complete overthrow of the government, disagreed with literally everything that was going on there and wanted complete upheaval. And they were willing to do whatever it took to gain independence from the monarchy. And this included violence and lots of it. Hey, violence. In a quote from the Sans-Culotte Gazette, it said that they wanted, quote, the enemies of the Republic to hang Maine and the guillotine to stand like the first patriots, the finisher of the law.
Agreed.
Woo!
That's kind of metal.
It is pretty metal.
Like,
and a lot of these executions with the guillotine happened at the Place de la Révolution, which is this area in Paris that you can still go to today. Wahoo! So the sans-culottes joined with Robespierre because they agreed with his ideas for the French Republic, and they also appreciated his understanding that violence was necessary to achieve change. Did I read? Oh yeah, I did. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I had read his quote, the whole, crush the enemies of the revolution, let the laws be executed, let liberty be saved. So there you go. So during the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror, alongside destroying the monarchy, revolutionaries were also fighting for freedom from the Christian influence in France. They wanted to disempower the clergy that had basically held its ranks alongside the monarchy, and kind of within the monarchy as well. With the fight against religious oppression, the class struggles, and the establishment of strong revolutionary forces, the Reign of Terror came into full swing. So, as of April 6th, 1793, the Committee of Public Safety was established. These guys were the ones who were in charge of arresting any counter-revolutionaries, carrying out executions, or awarding prison sentences. Which, it's just interesting to me, the name of that, because I feel like it kind of echoes like what the police forces in America are kind of called now. Like public safety officers.
Public safety,
which, I mean, that doesn't really mean anything, but it's just, like, it's interesting, like, the different influence of things as they kind of trickle down and turn into, like, other things.
I feel like the way that, like, Europe approaches policing is really interesting, too. Like, just... It's so much different than it is here from what I've, like, heard, you know? Like, police officers are much more, like, actual public servants over in Europe. At least from what I've heard.
Sure.
Not to say that they aren't shitty over there, too.
Right.
But, like, it's just not as gnarly as it is here. Because, like, I don't know that I've met a single person in America who, like... sees a police officer and is like, wow, I feel so safe right now.
Yeah.
Like, most of the people I know that are like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, like, it's an instant, like, uh-oh. And,
Yikes.
like, I feel like the only people that do get that, like, oh, thank God, is, like, fucking weird Republicans who also have a gun. So, like...
Yeah, and, like, always weird middle-aged white Republican guys.
Exactly.
Like...
Exactly. But yeah, it's like even, you know, I mean, as a person with immense white privilege, like, still whenever I see a cop, I'm like, ugh, fuck.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, like, acknowledging the white privilege, too.
Yeah.
Like, must be, like, I can't even imagine what
no, exactly.
people of color would go through.
Exactly.
Like, having to see that.
Like, yeah, it's just like you were saying, like, I feel like most people our age, a majority of people that I know are, like, don't feel safer if a police officer is present.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Another reason why we need violent revolutions.
Yes. A huge reason why we need violent revolutions, which, I mean, oh man, we could really go on for hours about that, but...
True.
Just...
I'm sure we'll have, like,
will.
a police...
Oh, we
at
have
least
to.
a police episode, probably a police miniseries, to be honest.
Honestly, yeah, we should, because there's just so fucking...
a whole lot that goes into it.
So fucking much to talk about there. Anywho, so, during the Reign of Terror, at least 300,000 suspects were arrested, 17,000 were officially executed, and it's estimated that about 10,000 died in prison or without trial.
Yeah.
So, King Louis XVI was executed via guillotine January 21st, 1793. That was a big old day for everyone. Some sick shit. They basically had, like, about a couple months prior to that, they had, like, stormed the palace and imprisoned all of the royals that were living there, and then put them all on trial, and then basically executed all of them because the trial was, you're evil, goodbye.
Bye.
So, January 21st, King Louis XVI is executed. On October 14th, on October 14th, 1793, Marie Antoinette was convicted of high treason and held to trial. On October 16th, 1793, 2 days later, Marie Antoinette was executed via guillotine. She was the last queen of France before the Revolution, as well as King Louis was the last king before the Revolution. Marie Antoinette is very famous for her line, "Let them eat cake."
Yeah.
Sure, everyone...
Which she, like, probably didn't actually say.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the historical accuracy is pretty debatable about that.
Yeah.
But it's famous because it's basically, like, her responding to the working class complaining about the high bread prices and starving and having no bread to eat. And so it's rumored or whatever that when questioned about this, she responds, "They want bread, let them eat cake," because she was a dumb bitch.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that these liberal snowflakes murdered all these people? How did How did they do that? They were probably too concerned with safe spaces.
Exactly.
And pronouns, like all the Republicans say.
Yeah, they were too busy arguing amongst themselves about, like, political ideologies.
Yoga and kombucha.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of being able to actually...
I just think it's funny because I feel like for a party that, like, talks about how, like, snowflakey liberals are, it's like, I'll fight you. Like, let's do it. Like, I don't know. I just feel like most of the, like, leftists I know are, like, down to swing on spot,
100%. Well, and I feel like historically it's been the left side that has been pretty, like, quick to violence. I mean, so is the right, but in a different way. Like, I feel like the left, when they want something, is like, okay, you die now.
Yeah, I think, like, the left is very quick to, like, stand up for...
Yeah.
At least in some cases, because, you know, not everything's the same, but...
Yes.
To, like, stand up for what's right when there is violence that's happening.
Sure.
Like, against people who don't deserve it.
Right.
From the right, usually,
right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, like, responding to, like, an overarching violence in the sense of, like... not giving people rights, not giving people food, not giving people access to the things that they need in order to survive. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's because a lot of people on the left are the working class, are the people that are being mistreated, and so, I mean, the revolutionary spirit is strong within them, and that is something that will... push you to do whatever it is that you need to do in order to, like, keep your people
I like how you even, like, called it violence, like, what the ruling class does to the working class. Like, it is a form of violence,
it's
whether it's legal or not legal violence, it's violence all the same because people are dying, you know?
Exactly. And that's the thing. And that's, like, I think where a lot of, like... Democrats need to get their heads out of their asses because, like, you cannot, we will never, ever, ever be able to free ourselves from the violence that the people in power are committing against us if people don't see it as violence. If you don't understand that not being able to have free fucking healthcare is an act of violence, like, you got to get with the program. Because, again, people are dying, and it's not just because they're being murdered, which they are, by the people in power, but it's also because we literally are scrambling in order to be able to even, like, take care of, oh, I cut myself, now it's infected, well, I can't afford to go to the hospital to even get stitches, now this cut's fucking infected, and now I'm dying of an infection of gangrene, and my whole arm's falling off, so now I'm dead. Like, that's fucking violence. That is violent. It is violent that, like, people are having to be on fucking food stamps.
Well, that's why it's, like, I've like, read a lot of things that's, like, every political system has violence towards a group. But the difference is, like, what is the group that the violence is directed towards? It's like, as leftists, we would say our violence is directed towards a ruling class and or a hierarchical. That's how you say that word. Government. Whereas, like, even like the Democrats or the neoliberals are still directing violence at a specific group, whether that's, you know, being the poor people or, you know, even, like, people who are in prison or incarcerated. Like, there's a lot of, you know, again, it really just depends on where your violence is directed at, but every political party or lack thereof, if you're even an anarchist, has violence directed at something. Right.
Well, and with, like, the Democratic and neoliberal parties, it's a subconscious violence as well, because they're so in denial, or they've been so placated and convinced that, like, what they're doing is actually helpful, and, like, oh, I'm a Democrat, so I'm off the hook, whatever. Like, and they maybe don't fully conceptualize, like, you are still not advocating for the rights of the people at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking Democrats. Anyway. So, Marie Antoinette, she sucked ass. So
kind of cringe, honestly.
She was cringe. Marie Antoinette was far from based. So 31st of October, I'm 100% gonna mispronounce this. Sorry, French people. The Girondins, I'm gonna say. This was a group that emerged kind of like towards the beginning of the revolution, who had been involved with political change in France, and they were strongly opposed to the monarchy. But as the revolution continued and became a little more intense, and obviously as, like, more violence started to emerge, they were like, no thanks. Which, it's interesting, it kind of reminds me, as you were saying, of the middle class. It's like they'll sort of lean towards whatever is feeling better to them. And this is kind of like that, but I think this is like that type of person who's like, yeah, I'm all about change and I'm all about radicalizing things and da-da-da. But then as soon as you introduce like violence, or as soon as you introduce like intense, like, yes, this is going to be from the ground up work, we need an entirely new system here, they're like, ooh, that sounds like a lot. So anyway.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this group, the Gironde, was put on trial, executed on October 31st. Because they were then seen as counter-revolutionaries.
Wow.
February 4th, 1974, a decree for the abolition of slavery in France and French colonies was released. And I mean,
Wait, what year did you say?
1974.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was like recent. Well, not too
Oh my
recent.
gosh. Nope. I've written that down wrong.
Okay, I was like, I'm very confused. I'm sorry,
No,
Phoebe.
not 1974. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I think I switched the numbers. It's got to be 1794. That's what it was.
That makes sense,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
You're good.
Sorry,
I was just
everyone.
like,
Thank you.
pardon?
Just jump forward a million years. 1794. I had like number switched. Decree for the abolition of slavery in France and in the French colonies was released. You know, whether or not that actually like worked in the French colonies is a whole other fucking thing, because the whole idea of French colonies is some shit. But anyway.
I mean, yeah.
That's for another
colonization
episode.
in general. It's like.
Truth.
It's all kind of, I mean, again, a hierarchy is a hierarchy, whether it's slavery or, you know, making enough money to barely feed yourself.
Exactly.
And you basically just have a different form of paid slavery, like, you know.
Which, again, a tangent. But the podcast that I was just listening to talking about healthcare was basically saying that, like, your company that you work for providing you with healthcare is, like, almost a form of, maybe not slavery, but servitude, where you are literally, like, shackled to this company. It's such a huge part of why or why not people choose to leave a job that's extremely oppressive, because if they do, like, the first thing that's going to happen to you is like, well, now your kids are going to die because you don't have fucking healthcare anymore.
Yeah, no, my dad's going through that thing right now because he's trying to get a new job to move, and, like, he's stuck with his, you know, the job he doesn't want because that gives him the best healthcare.
Yeah,
like,
it's modern servitude.
It's fucking expensive to buy your own healthcare.
It's
like,
extremely expensive.
You had to do that.
I hate it. I just turned 26 at the beginning of this year. So.
Yeah, and you're technically freelance. Is that what?
I'm.
What you have to?
Yeah, I'm a small business owner and a single business owner. I'm an LLC. And so it sucks ass, basically.
It just sucks.
It does suck. Anyway, healthcare tangent. We could go on for a long time about that. So, the abolition of slavery, which is like, I don't know, I put it in there because it was an interesting, like, movement forward of things, progressive movement. Anyway. June 10th, 1794, the law of 22 Prairial was passed. This basically fast-tracked the trial process with the execution, so it cut down the steps in order to just make executions happen a hell of a lot faster.
Down faster.
Yeah. Which this obviously led to an extreme increase in executions. And this is kind of where, like, I was talking to Taylor before we were rolling, where, like, it becomes a little bit out of hand violently, because there was a lot of, like, paranoia going on, and they started just arresting massive amounts of people. Anybody that had any kind of, like, counter-revolutionary vibes to them, they would imprison them and just executed, like, a lot of people. But because of this, like, if these executions had not happened, the French Revolution would not have had the impact that it did. And it would not have, like, forced the bourgeoisie and the monarchy and the upper classes to either conform to this new, like, republic or die. and it pushed a lot of people who were on the fence about revolutionary things to being a part of the revolution. So, like, I'm not saying it's awesome that they murdered a bunch of people that, like, may or may not have been innocent, but also, like, this revolution shaped politics and governmental structures as we know it for the rest of our lives. And yeah, like, if they hadn't been willing to be as violent as they were, they would not have accomplished the things that they wanted to.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, you can acknowledge that, like, they let it get out of hand and it was probably wrong, like, morally wrong, but that's what happened, and it did lead to where we're at now, regardless of, like, again, the morality of it.
Sure.
You know, again, we can say, like, in the future, it'd be nice to not have that happen if we were going to
It'd be
revolt
cool
again.
To, like,
but
not guillotine people that were, like, possibly innocent, but...
Yeah. But that doesn't change that it happened back then.
Exactly.
You know?
And it's like, you have to look at where these people were coming from as well. Like, the conditions were so dark. I mean, it's basically where we're at right now. There had been an epidemic in France that was, like, wiping out a bunch of people, and the bourgeoisie was doing nothing to support the working class in this. Obviously, like, working conditions were shit. The working class was being treated like shit. The bourgeoisie was fucking partying it up. Like,
always.
You know, there was just, and the Catholic Church was oppressing everyone, and there was just all of this stuff that compounded. And I mean, that's what you get. Like, sorry, but that's what you get when you treat people like this, like we're currently being treated. There is going to be a point at which people are going to snap, and people are going to fucking die. And it sucks that it's going to be possibly innocent people sometimes, but, like, you're gonna, the whole, like, break an egg to make some omelets or whatever.
Yeah.
Not saying it's the greatest thing ever, just saying that's the reality of life.
And that's how it was. You know? And also, I mean, shout out to old friend of the pod, the Catholic Church, for never doing anything wrong ever.
Exactly. Yes. We heart the Catholic Church. Please don't hurt us.
I'm pretty sure there was, like, I think in the Spanish Revolution, there was, like, a lot of anarchists who killed a lot of priests or something like that. Because, like, it was, I mean, but also, like, it was, you could say it was wrong, but, I mean, the Catholic Church caused a whole lot of bad shit to happen.
The Crusades.
I mean, the Crusades, the amount of, like, kids that have been, assaulted and killed, and I mean, again, there's some shit you can get into at the Catholic Church, like mass graves of just, like, outside of, like, schools and stuff.
Like, that whole thing.
Yeah, there's been tons of shit. So it's like, Catholic Church sucks. But again, that's another topic for another time.
A shit ton of priests died in the Reign of Terror as well. Many priests were beheaded at this time.
Yeah. It's tough because it's like, again, there were some priests, especially if you look down to, like, I'm pretty sure in, like, Latin America there was, like, a lot of really helpful things that the Catholic Church did, you know, but then again, there's some pretty bad stuff too.
Yeah, and it's not like every single Catholic person is so evil or whatever, and, like, the idea of they're, like, the idea of, like, anyway, you know what, we don't need to get into it. Whatever.
It's some
Moral
shit.
of the story is, some bad shit has happened, but, like, fucking whatever. Anyway.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, because I was like, I'm about to, like, go on a whole other very long religion tangent, and, like, we don't need to do that right now. So, the Perial, sorry about my pronunciation. Again, every single time I try to figure it out, and French is hard. So, where did my notes go on that? Oh, no. I'm so sorry. Where the fuck did that go?
It's all good.
Well, I had, like, statistics of the numbers of, like, how many people were being executed on the daily. Mm-hmm. And it was...
You know what we could do while you find that is...
Is it take an ad break?
Absolutely. You guessed it.
Well, you know what won't chop your head off? Ads.
This ad for the podcast app. Anyway, be right back.
I'll get it together.
We're back.
Hey.
We were just talking about how everybody has to have an addiction to cope with capitalism. So leave us a comment on what your addiction is. Sorry. Or don't, because, that's a private thing, but it would be funny.
In like a cute and quirky way,
Yeah. Like, if it's a struggle that you're going through, don't. Please keep it to yourself. Unless you want to share it because that would make you feel better.
And, like, we love you and support you.
Yeah, of course. But, like, I was thinking, like, funny stuff, too. Like, oh, I'm addicted to, I don't know. What's a funny addiction? I'm addicted to nicotine, personally. Which I think is pretty funny, but also probably not. My doctor would disagree. But.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, we can move on past that.
My addiction is yelling about capitalism. Okay, so I got my shit together, everyone. Sorry about that. I definitely was, like, taking a nap before I got here, so I kind of was like, where am I? Anyway, so this Parial law passed, ramped up executions. They were starting at, like, an average of 5 executions a day in the province known as Germinal, I think it's pronounced. That rate came up to 17 a day. And in another province, it raised to 26 a day.
Jeez.
Yes. And this is just, like, an interesting tidbit, but, like, the whole, like, thing of guillotining people, it was, like, public executions, chopping heads off. This became, like, the entertainment of the day. Like, people would come down, like, spectators would come down and hang out around, and people would, like, sell shit. Vendors had programs that had the list of names of people scheduled to die for the day, and people would, like, just chill out and watch the executions.
Yeah, that's insane, but, I mean, I don't know, what else are you gonna do?
I mean,
I guess, like...
in the 1700s Paris. There was, like, this group of knitting women who were, like, big fans of the guillotinings, and they would, like, rile up the crowd and sit around and, like, knit while the fucking guillotinings were going on.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And people would, like, bring their kids, too. Like, this was like, this is our fun activity of the day. Who's gonna get their head chopped off?
It's like a sports game.
Yeah, essentially. By the end of the Reign of Terror, the crowds kind of started to thin out, and, like, people kind of got bored of, like, head choppings.
They got bored of the executions.
They're like, oh my god, this is the 30th execution I've seen today.
Yeah,
like,
oh my gosh.
How fun is it to watch?
Can we change it up? Like, another guillotine? Oh my god.
All you've got is hangings and guillotines. Can you come up with something else?
Jesus.
So,
it's like watching a Saw movie. Like, by the 14th one, you're
really,
like...
though.
All right.
Yeah, or like Saw or like Final Destination. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like I've seen somebody get their fucking... How much more ways can you choose for people to die? And it's just blood everywhere. Like, snooze fest. Yeah, and it's interesting too, like just fucking case in point, I guess, like how desensitized we've become to like horror movies and stuff. Like, I am so unfazed by a lot of horror movies these days. Like, it's gotta be like a good horror movie in order to really get me.
I watch them just like by myself in a dark room to like try to scare myself more because I just don't feel anything.
Because I don't feel anything. Because you know what's scarier than possession? Capitalism. So as I was saying, so now getting into like what the outcome of this was and like why it was even with like its out of handness and even with like, a lot of people died in a way that maybe like they shouldn't have, it's had good impacts on everything. Big changes in the European and Western history. This ended feudalism, and created like leeway for individual freedoms. With Louis XVI being king and that monarchy. The power was centralized to Versailles, controlled by the monarchy. And that, as I had said earlier, happened just from, like, noble births, shit tons of wealth, etc. And the monarchy having control over, like, the clergy. And honestly, the clergy having a shit ton of influence with the monarchy as well. Like, they kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah.
The monarchy having control over the army, etc. Or, not, yes, army is what I meant to say. I'm telling you my brain right now. But yeah, following this revolution, the king basically really meant nothing anymore. Nobility was stripped of all of their titles and all of their, like, power that they had. And the clergy and the judges and all of that turned over to state control. And then the control of, like, the army was put into the revolutionaries. And they formed their own National Guard. You might know the slogan, Liberty, Equality, Fraternité, which was, like, the chorus of the revolutionaries at the time, and to this day that is like a huge thing in France. As you walk around in Paris or wherever, you see this emblazoned on like a ton of shit.
It was kind of like their like life, liberty,
exactly,
and the pursuit of happiness kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Which in English it means liberty, equality, and fraternity, which means like fraternity is like brotherhood, which basically is like the unification of like the people.
Yeah. Pretty much the same thing, really.
Yes.
Very
basically,
similar.
yeah. It's, like I said, like, and as I'm getting into right now, like, the French Revolution influenced so much of, at least, like, the foundations of American government. Obviously, it's, like I said, a shithole now. But, like, the ideas were there, you know? They took things from this.
Well, and again, it was, like, moving from, like, a monarch to, like, a, you know, republic, capitalist economy kind of system. It's like at the time that was still pretty like revolutionary.
It's true.
And even like at the time, it's hard to even fault people because like again, a lot of economic systems on paper seem better than they are in practice, I guess, or that's what everybody like says about communism. But the same with capitalism. It's like, you know, it's a nice idea on paper to be like, yeah, we can all start our own businesses and sell products and make the money that we earn.
Exactly.
It just doesn't actually work that way.
Yes. But yeah, like the idea was there, like with the abolition of feudalism coming into, people now own their own farms and the money that they make from the farm is theirs. Again, somewhat in theory. But it did pretty much happen in France after the revolution. To give like a little kind of overview snippet, historian Francois Alluard had this to say, quote, "From the social point of view, the revolution consisted in the suppression of what was called the feudal system, in the emancipation of the individual, in greater division of the landed property, the abolition of the privileges of noble birth, the establishment of equality, the simplification of life. The French Revolution differed from other revolutions in being not merely national, for it aimed at benefiting all humanity." Hooray.
Oh yeah.
This revolution sparked like a wave of revolution throughout Europe. You know, Germany and all, it just,
as France does
as
often.
France, yeah. I mean, yeah, the French fucking love revolution, which personally I'm like, hell yeah. Also, of course, this is tied to Marxism because I can just never,
of course,
not talk about communism. This revolution and it's called the Jacobin cause. That's kind of like the ideals of this revolution was known as like the Jacobin. Marxists were influenced by this in the 19th century, and it kind of like influenced communism throughout the world. So even after like the French Revolution and things have not always been perfect in France, and things haven't been just easygoing since the French Revolution. This influenced people to realize their own power. Like I was just saying, and you were just saying, France revolts all the fucking time. Because of this revolutionary spirit of the French Revolution, people hold this power within themselves now that we are actually capable of making these differences. And it this French Revolution also sort of influenced the idea of socialism as well. So yeah, basically,
workers' movement.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, you think, like, you know, aside from fucking Britain, it's like, who, like, kings aren't even a thing, like, you know,
Right.
like, society has progressed past the need for kings.
Exactly,
But,
though. And
yeah, it's like, it's just,
and
we don't have them anymore.
that's due to,
probably
a
big part to this, you know.
to the French Revolution, and honestly to beheading the shit out of the king. It's like, look at what will happen to you.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, basically, like, the violence of this revolution, whether or not you can agree with it, has greatly shaped people's freedoms to this day.
Agreezy.
And, like, in this podcaster's opinion, it was pretty necessary. The end.
That was great. That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and very similar to, like, what I'm going to be talking about here.
Hell yes.
Which, to start mine off, I'm speaking about the Russian Revolution, which, very similarly to the France Revolution, was a pretty big deal in Russia, obviously. But, you know, this is even before, because it kind of, like, the Russian Revolution plays right into the Bolshevik Revolution. Before we jump into that, I was going to do a quick summary of a Marxist view on revolution and violent revolution. I kind of got some of this information from a Dr. Stephen Hicks, who went through a lot of Marx's writings and things. And one of the biggest reasons why a lot of socialists, communists, and just leftists in general are for violent revolution in a way is because the amount of time it would take to create a democratic reform is, like, compared to, like, the kind of violence that we were talking about that's happening is a lot of time.
Right.
Because you have to get people, you know, a socialist into the government. You have to then, well, first off, you have to organize and then get a party and then get into the government and then get more and more government spots and then implement changes that are always going to be fought against, you know, throughout time.
Exactly.
And that just takes a lot of time.
And, like, oh my gosh, sorry.
You're good.
Get words out today, Phoebe. The amount of, like, damage that we're experiencing now compared to the amount of time that it would actually take. Like, we are in an emergency situation now and in the past, you know? And, like, we don't have the fucking time to do that. And so in order to quicker get people, like, their rights and things that they need, we're gonna have to chop some heads.
Exactly.
Which, like, can I go off just a little bit?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
what this podcast is for.
But just, like, the whole, exactly as you're saying, like, the whole idea of all of the steps that we would have to take working within the channels that exist. And then at the end, it's like, well, is that even going to be able to get us what we need? Because honestly, I feel like if voting actually worked in the favor of the proletariat, it would have been outlawed by now. Or we would have seen the changes that needed to have happened in order to give people rights by now. Like, we know for a fact, and if you're listening to this podcast, you probably agree that the people in power are completely unwilling to give up their power. So why would they willingly give us an opportunity to take that power away? Like, even if Bernie had been elected president, he never would have been able to make the changes that he really wanted to, because, like, America's...
No one would let him.
Yeah, like, America's never going to allow this country to actually be socialist if we go through the channels that exist.
Yeah, and that's like this is kind of a tangent too, but I forget his last name. His first name's Errico, but he's like an anarchist writer, and he would always, like, he would bring up points as a government is created to protect the majority class, and the elected official that is coming into office is always going to try to gain the favor of the previous one. And it's just this long chain of people protecting their own private property, and that's why it's like, we need to abolish private property.
Right. Yeah. Well, and even, like, again, even if Bernie had taken power, there's still the entirety of Congress working against him.
Exactly. And it's like, and, you know, as much as because I do really think that Bernie had, like, good intentions with everything 100%. He was doing. It's just, I don't think that Bernie's good intentions were powerful enough to overcome all of the other people that don't have good intentions in government.
Exactly. And yeah, like, I mean, there's a reason that the people in power push us to work through these channels that exist, voting and running for office and etc. Because it's like, no matter what we do, if we're working within the parameters that are created by those in power, and we're working with parameters that the people in power have deemed like appropriate, we're never actually going to be able to make the changes that will take their power away, or it will give us enough power to actually reduce theirs. Like, there's a reason why it works the way that it does and why they want you to do shit in a certain way, because
it makes you feel like you're making a change.
Exactly. It's the whole placation thing. Like, you feel like, oh, because I'm checking Hillary Clinton on a box, like, I'm a good person or whatever, which I'm not saying that you're bad people, but, like, you know, you think, oh, she's actually going to be able to change everything this time. And it's like, nope, she's the same as Donald Trump. Like, they're all the same. And there's a reason why they want us to feel this way. And it just does for us leftists, gets us nowhere. And for Democrats, it makes them feel like they're doing something to no fault of their own, to an extent, you know? Okay.
It's true.
Thank you.
But, no, you're good. In addition to that argument, though, Marx, in a lot of his writings, seems to have believed a lot more in the nurture side of the personality type argument versus the nature side. For example, Marx stated in one of his writings, activity and mind are social in their content, as in their origin. They are a social activity and a social mind. And again, the individual exists in reality as the representation and the real mind of social existence. So basically his argument is like, you as a person are your essence of who you are, your personality is formed by your social existence, or where you fall on like the social chain, right? He believed your beliefs were influenced by economic systems and status. The wealthy defend the wealthy and the poor defend the poor. No matter what. So it's like, it was this argument that like the bourgeoisie and the proletariat like aren't ever going to be able to argue each other into one another's views.
Right.
So if that's the case, the only way for the proletariat to overthrow the bourgeoisie is by violent revolution.
Sure.
Because of these different things. One thing that I think is interesting is with the kind of propaganda climate that we have in America, at least, and I mean everywhere really, kind of the way that like the bourgeoisie or just the upper class has been able to kind of trick the middle class and even some lower class people into like defending billionaires.
Yes.
Like, because it's really unfortunate because it gets in the way of social progress because we can't band together.
Right.
But like, yeah, I don't know. Someone smarter than me should look into that.
Well, I mean, look at the way that, like, the low working class was in gigantic support of Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Like, he's a fucking billionaire. Or maybe.
Yeah, he's a billionaire.
It's like...
It's like, he doesn't care about you.
No.
He does not give a fuck. Like,
but they've been convinced that he has their best interests in mind.
Yeah, and that's what's so frustrating is it's like... It's so much harder for the working class to band together than it is for the upper class.
Exactly. Well, because, like, we are having to fight each other in order to just survive.
Exactly.
And with the, as you were saying, like, with the propaganda in America and everywhere, like, they've been conditioned and convinced that these things are working in their favor, at least, you know, a portion of, like, the working class.
Yeah. So, and those two arguments, I feel like, kind of go hand in hand, like the time that it would take to create a socialist or a progressive change through legitimate means and the, you know, two warring classes. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. Sure. It's like the upper class isn't going to let social reform happen legally,
right?
Because they don't have the lower class's interests at heart, you know. So it's just like they kind of are the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that brings me to the Russian Revolution, which in 1917, two revolutions in Russia sparked the end of imperial rule. Russia was always more underdeveloped, historically behind the rest of Europe. They didn't abolish serfdom until 1861. So, I mean, it was kind of feudalism, but so they were, and I mean, Russia is definitely more Eastern than,
right,
like, France and whatnot, but, so they were just a little bit behind everybody else, whereas most of Europe did by the end of the Middle Ages abolish serfdom. From 1890 through 1910, Russia industrialized quickly, causing the populations of major cities to nearly double, leaving a new class of working poor destitute and impoverished. And that was at, like, St. Petersburg was a big city in Russia, and Moscow and those places were gaining population really fast. The rising population, costly wars, and a harsh growing season caused a massive food shortage, which led to the Bloody Sunday Massacre of 1905.
Sunday Bloody.
Exactly. I think that's probably what that's all about. That song's about, but
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I do know that Viva La Vida by Coldplay is
about the French Revolution.
I know that for a fact. It's
a fucking fact, bro.
My history teacher played it on the ukulele when I was in high
ukulele.
School. I know. It was, I mean, I don't know, it stuck with me, I guess.
Yeah, which is interesting that you mentioned the population rising thing, because that same thing happened during the French Revolution, the Catholicism with the whole baby thing, and and then the same kind of issues were happening with the population rising, and there were people without jobs and blah, blah, blah.
Just industrialization in general, too.
Yeah, true.
Always pushes people into cities.
Very true.
But so the Tsar's troops killed hundreds of unarmed people on the Bloody Sunday Massacre. It was Tsar Nicholas II. This caused the Tsar to create the massacres in 1905 caused the Tsar to create a representative assembly. So kind of like a parliament or like a parliamentary government, but I mean, he could override them whenever he wanted, though, and would like call them off all the time. So it's like they really were just for show. Like they didn't actually do anything. After the devastating consequences of World War I against industrialized Germany, because again the West was much more ahead of Russia at the time. Russian citizens were pretty over the Tsar. Fun fact, Petrograd was originally called St. Petersburg, but they changed it because it sounded too German.
Oh my god.
So that's, fun fact I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
There was a February Revolution, which was actually on March 8th, 1917, but they used the Julian calendar, so made it February.
Sure.
There was demonstrators and striking workers that took the streets and clashed with police. The army tried to stop them by shooting and killing quite a bit of them, but they were overran because of just how many people, kind of in the same French Revolution style, there's just, when you get to the point where like, you're like, I'm going to die from starvation or I'm going to die by getting shot trying to protest for rights. It's like, what do you do, right? Like, you go
same
protest.
Thing with the Cuban Revolution as well.
Exactly, yeah, like, and again, that's where like
I guess
the
with
violence
most
comes in.
revolutions.
Yeah, that's where the violence comes in, and like, a few days later, Tsar Nicholas II abdicated the throne, ending centuries of Romanov rule. Sorry, I'm struggling on the pronunciations as well.
I'm sorry, the cat she did something so cute. She was stretching and she stuck both her arms underneath the rug.
Oh,
I died. Okay,
cute
sorry.
Little girl.
Sorry,
anyway,
everyone.
That's okay. There was a provisional government that formed to take the place of the Tsar, which was kind of like neoliberal. Again, very like, very republic-like, for like kind of what the French Revolution was going for, like more just republic, more democratic kind of vibes.
Sure.
But yeah, so all of this kind of leading up, like there was definitely violence that needed to take place because you know Nicholas II, the Tsar, he alienated ethnic groups, would not give up power, left to fight World War I. There was 2 million Russian soldiers that died in World War I, which was a huge part of it. And a similar number of civilians died from hunger. So it's like World War I and civilians just dying of hunger were the same, which they kind of go together, you know, because all of the food was going to the soldiers.
Exactly.
And they were also getting fucking killed because they were in a war that they really shouldn't have. I mean, I guess that's something for a war historian to argue if Russia should have been in the war or not. But it's like... Again, like, Germany at the time was, like, one of the strongest armies and, like, military powers ever. So it's like, I don't know how they thought they could win. But anyway.
With the snow alone.
Only
we'll get them.
Only with the snow. Honestly, that's it. It's like Russia's biggest, like, military strength is just the snow.
Like, it kind of was, though.
It's true. It's fucking true.
They're like, you may have guns and tanks, but can you survive this Russian winter?
Yeah. But so on November 6th and 7th, the Bolshevik Party, led by our boy Vladimir Lenin, took the power from this, like, neoliberal government and did basically a coup d'etat, which... I mean, if your government's that new, like a couple of months old, is it really a coup d'etat? It's like, I don't know. It's like you barely even had a government.
Yeah, calm down, Lenin.
But so it actually was pretty peaceful, like when it initially took place, like the coup d'etat. There wasn't really a lot of bloodshed that took place, but after the coup d'etat of the Bolshevik Party was when the Russian Civil War broke out. And that was basically capitalists, monarchs, and democratic socialists all fight. They were called the White Army, all fighting against the Red Army, which was the Bolsheviks.
Right.
And obviously, Bolsheviks came out on top. And
sure did.
The real irony, I feel like, is I feel like Lenin was a pretty good. I mean, everybody has flaws, of course, but Lenin was a pretty good guy, you know, like he would just wanted people to have equality and like feed each other, you know, and he had to go deal with all this like Civil War shit, and then I'm pretty sure like after they won the Civil War, he died shortly after, and that's when like Stalin took power.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just like kind of a shame, I feel like, because
agreed.
They could have done a lot of cool things if it wasn't for fucking Stalin being an asshole.
Well, and that was the whole thing. I can't remember which episode it was a while ago that I was also talking about the Russian Revolution, where, like, Lenin had kind of worked to create this socialist/communist government, and then he died, and so Stalin was able to take place and then was like, let me abuse this.
Exactly. Aw, she jumped on your lap.
This is a great kitty day. Hi, sweetheart.
And yeah, so that's kind of the Russian Revolution, and I think just, you know, noting that like not only was there violence against the existing government, but like they had to fight to hold on to their government, you know, like the Bolshevik Revolution. Like, they had to fight an entire civil war against people who were trying to take back...
Right.
And really take back this oppression. And, again, not to say that Lenin or even the Bolsheviks were perfect about everything, but it's like, you know, you could argue that Tsar Nicholas II was even worse, so...
Exactly.
It's like...
Exactly.
You know, part of it is the revolution, but also it's like there's always going to be people who are trying to try to be, like, bringing that down or making it go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
You know, make America great again kind of shit.
Exactly. Well, and there comes a time when, like, the people gotta do what the people gotta do, and it probably isn't going to be perfect or completely flawless or completely, like, fucking morally whatever the fuck. But, like, what's the alternative is nothing. The alternative is continue to suffer. Like, it's the whole thing of where, you know, people right now are very opposed to, like, a violent revolution, which I can understand, but I'm also like, well, I get your fears, and I get the whole thing of, like, well, what comes after that, whatever. But at the same time, so we just don't try, so we just don't do anything, and we just continue suffering the way that we are, and allowing,
and
like,
letting other people to, like, suffer and die, you know?
Yes, like, allowing, we just take with chagrin that, like, walking down the street, you're like, well, there's a guy taking a shit out on the street because he literally does not have access to a bathroom. Like, do we just accept that that's okay because violent revolution is scary?
Yeah. I know, it's a hard conversation, and, like, I don't even know if there's one, like, specific answer for every, because obviously, you know, again, every revolution is different, and everybody has different views. You know, we were talking about this a little bit before, but, like, I subscribe very much to, like, kind of actually at the same time of the Russian Revolution, I had talked in our anarchism versus communism episode about Nestor Makhno and the Black Army, like the anarchist army. One thing that they did was, like, when they were reclaiming land from landlords, is they would say, like, all right, you can give us your stuff so we can redistribute it and you can join our cause, or we're going to steal all of your stuff and you're going to die. Yeah. And I feel a pretty strong conviction about, like, giving people and giving the upper class, like, the ability to change and, like, join a revolution, just because I think that then they've had the choice to, like, reject capitalism and to, like,
totally
at least have a chance to, like, feel empathy for other people, I guess, you know? Right. Whereas, like, some people would argue that it's, like, too late for those people, you know? And, like, we just need to cut our losses with them. Yeah. So it's, like, again, it's hard to know, like, what is the right thing to do. Totally.
Well, and I think, too, it's, like, at least, and I mean, excluding from what I'm saying right now, like, the Jeff Bezos and billionaire, like, really, really high elites of the world, but, like, the kind of more, like, upper class.
It's, like, wealthy kind of people. Yeah,
like, definitely giving those people a chance, because it's the thing of, like, you have been propagandized to believe that one way of living is the exact correct way. And, you know, like, to an extent, I don't fault people who don't understand, because literally this country is designed to make you believe one type of thing, and it's that, like, you should get rich and don't care about poor people and et cetera, like. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, too, because then it's like, you know, I could see an argument being like, well, if we're going to hold Jeff Bezos accountable for his exploitation, shouldn't we also hold, like, even this, like, semi-small business owner or franchise owner? Because it's like, again, every capitalist exploits labor, you know, and causes suffering in some way or another. But I guess, you know, that's the tricky part about, like, morality is it's hard to, like, weigh whose is worse, you know.
For sure. And I can understand that perspective as well, you know. And, like, all of this being said, too, I don't think in this moment we're prepared for a violent revolution. I mean, I who's to say? I'm not 100% sure. But I think that we have reached and surpassed the point where it's necessary.
Like, I would agree with that.
The issue is that the people in power have so much power and have incredibly horrific killing machines that, like, they have fucking drones. Like, you know, it is going to be so difficult. And we don't have that much power, but we have each other.
Exactly.
And, like, but genuinely.
No, I agree. Well, and, you know, to go back to what we were talking about, it's like, whether it's legal violence or illegal violence, it's all violence, and the only difference is that they make the laws.
Exactly. So. Fucking exactly. And so, like, you can't really have moral opposition to the idea of a violent revolution from, like, the working class proletariat, whatever, what have you, because then you're just complacent in the violence that's going on a daily.
Exactly. And it's like, again, you can say, like, I don't want violence, but it's like, then you're just allowing violence to happen.
Exactly. You're just looking the other way
It's just
as it
legal,
continues. Right.
because the people who are doing it made it legal.
Exactly.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's hard. And I also don't think that, like, because, you know, I know that, like, it's easy, at least with myself, I've experienced this, to be like, well, we got to go do something. We got to go, like, blow something up. We gotta go firebomb a McDonald's,
which
you know?
I totally am down for.
Exactly, I'm down for it too. But also, like, be safe and don't do something that is gonna not be worth it in the end, you know?
Exactly.
It's like, as fun as firebombing a McDonald's sounds,
would totally be.
You know, you're just giving McDonald's insurance money and probably putting yourself in prison. So it's like that. Then you're not going to help anybody.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like there needs to be like an organization and an establishment of like this is our plans for what needs to happen and like and what movements are going to be the most beneficial.
Yeah, exactly.
Firebombing the White House, maybe.
Maybe. We could get an inside job. Phoebe, do we have anybody on the White House? You know, like friend of the pod, like White House chef
White House
or something.
Connection? I mean,
Corey in the house.
Corey,
we're friend with Corey, right?
Corey Baxter.
Yeah, exactly. What a show!
Oh my god, yeah, that was so funny. To tangent just about Disney shows, it's so funny to me how like, and I feel like it's particularly Disney shows. Will have a show that runs for like a long time, and then when that kind of gets old, they'll just take that same concept but put them in like a different location.
Oh, absolutely.
Like for instance, Corey in the House or Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. They just put them on a boat.
Yeah,
like them being in a hotel is not interesting anymore, so now they're on a boat.
Let's just like throw them on a boat.
Yeah,
Why the fuck not? Yeah.
And then like wasn't it I think it was Corey in the House and fucking one of the other kids, I think maybe from Hannah Montana or something, like went and did a show that was like the two of them, and then Sam and Kat. So it was Sam from iCarly and Kat from Victorious, and they just did a show together, and it was just like
and that was Nickelodeon.
That was Nickelodeon, yeah. But I don't know, it's just fucking funny to me that they're like, let's not come up with anything original. We'll just kind of tweak the plot.
Throw them in a different place, but. Well, so we've gotten a little off the rails because now we're 100% talking about
off the rails
Disney, but that's all right. I'm not upset about it, to be honest. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts, comments?
I mean,
inspirations.
Yeah, I do, and I'll try to keep it brief. But basically, okay, then I won't. Basically. Just my frustration with people who oppose like the idea of violent revolution, and particularly like a lot of the talk that I heard like last year about like, well, you know, there's people in Portland doing this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, but yet these people are, you know, they want to call themselves patriots, etc. Like they are so emboldened and passionate about the idea of like the original like American Revolution, and I'm like, how do you not see that is exactly what we're just trying to do now? Like the simple basis of those things is exactly where we're at now. These people felt that they were being mistreated. These people disagreed with the people that were representing them and creating the laws that controlled their lives, and so they revolted, and it was violent. Don't kid yourself that the fucking American Revolution was not violent. I mean, these people uphold fucking war heroes and shit. Like, yeah, that's violence. And so if you're upset about what's going on now or what we wish to go on now, like, I don't fucking know. Get your shit together, because it's the same thing. You cannot look at the American Revolution with such fervor and then look at what we're trying to organize now and be like, you need to find a way to do that peacefully. You can't hurt people. Da, da, da.
Yeah, it's like you're going to be mad that somebody broke into a Target and stole some shit, but then you're going to be like, hell yeah, the Boston Tea Party was sick, you know?
Exactly.
It's like, what the fuck? It's the same thing.
Exactly. It's just, it's so hypocritical to me and it makes me crazy. And I'm like, how do you not see the parallels of, like, people were being mistreated. People are being horribly mistreated now.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and it's, just the idea of, like, patriotism is, like, hardly even, like, patriotism anymore. It's mostly just, like, a cult following of, like, this, weird toxic masculinity idea of like what being an American is, you know?
The sucking of the sucking of cops' dicks.
Yeah, the sucking of cops' cocks.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, it's, again, I mean, it's like, and then there's a lot of like sections of the right that are like, yeah, let's go kill some communists, and it's like, yeah, dude, I'll fucking swing on spot. That's why all the leftists need to get guns. You should get one. Because the right has much more guns than we do.
So many guns they have.
It's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, mine didn't go on as very long.
Oh, that's okay.
Granted, I was trying to like be somewhat speedy, but
sorry if I took up so much time.
Phoebe, you never take up too much time.
Thank you.
I could listen to you talk for hours.
Oh, Taylor. I mean, same. Which is why we're doing this podcast.
That's why we do
That's literally why we started. We would literally corner ourselves at a party and just be talking about politics for like ever. And so it was like
pulling out the whole time. Yeah.
Eventually it was like, okay, we need like a specific outlet for this so we don't ruin everybody's night all the time.
Yeah. Parties are much more enjoyable now with us,
it's
probably.
True. I was going off about it like last night, or the other night, but like, I mean,
I don't know.
I can't help it.
There's times where you can't help it. And
it's true.
It's also hard when you only have specific people you can talk about it with, too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we'll call it there.
Yes.
Pluggables. We should do that.
City, USA.
Was it...
Oh.
Justin, who...
It was Justin.
Commented the SpongeBob episode.
It was. His favorite episode was Just One Bite. The episode where Squidward finally decides to try a bite of Krabby Patty, and then he becomes obsessed with them and tries to keep it a secret.
And it goes right to his thighs.
Exactly.
And then he blows up.
Yep. So thanks, Justin. We love you.
Shout out, Justin.
Friend of the pod. Very, very close friend of the pod.
Phoebe, now it's your turn to pick something that people need to comment for a shout out.
Not your addictions.
Yeah, don't do that. That was a joke.
Don't actually do that. Okay. How about you comment your favorite fucking type of bird?
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite type of bird, and you could get a shout out.
Yeah.
Someone do it, because if not, it'll be Justin again next week. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that ties in because the whole crows thing.
Yeah.
Shout out your favorite bird.
We're fucking...
Your favorite bird, or what bird you are the most healthily afraid of.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, we're warning you about the crows. We're going to stick on the crow story, and when it happens, we'll tell you we told you so.
Yeah. No, we said it here first. The podcast is at Remarks Podcast the Instagram is at Remarks Podcast on Instagram, and the TikTok is of the same thing, at Remarks Podcast. I have one TikTok up. I'm desperately working on another one, but it's so hard.
It's okay, Phoebe. We all understand.
Thank you.
And again, you know what? Like, we all have fucking jobs.
It's true.
Give us a break. We do this once a week already, so like...
Exactly. We got a lot of shit going on.
True. The Twitter is at RemarksPod, and I have a YouTube channel called The Lefty Agenda, which I just put out a new video on rainbow capitalism.
Yes!
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's everything.
That is it.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, love you, bye!